Hello everyone, I'm Arnaldo, and in this short video I am hoping I can teach you a little bit more about exception handling. So there's a few ways to handle exceptions in Java, and one of them is to let the JVM do it for you, or throw the exception. The other one is you can use try-catch blocks, try-catch finally blocks. So what are they, right? They're just blocks that enclose code and code that may throw an exception, and you may want to handle it in some way, right? So when should you use it? If you want to take care of some very specific exception in a very specific way. So I'll show you an example really quickly. Other things to think about when using try-catch blocks. You can use several catch blocks per every try block. That's one of the things, and although finally is not necessary, if added it will run no matter the outcome, and I'll also show you that. And if you have a try block, you must have a finally or a catch block after it. So here's a really quick example of what try catch looks like. So you have some code that may throw an exception, and this is where you would put it. Actually, let's use this. Yep, this is where you would put it. Then here you say, oh, this is the exception I think I'm going to throw, and this would be how you're going to handle it, right? So are you going to send a message to the user, or will you throw a different exception? I mean, what is your plan here, right? And finally, is used if you have like a scanner, and I mean the very last thing you want this to perform, right? So maybe you have a scanner and you want to close it, or I guess that's the only example I can think of. Okay, so actually I will show you something very quickly. Code. So here I have some code. This main will run this function here, which will try to do some crazy stuff, but actually lets you see what happens if I try to run it. So if I try to run it, I immediately get some exceptions. So it says I have an array index out of bounds exception. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. At line 20. So wait a minute, that does not make sense. Oh, sorry. So main. Okay, yeah, this makes more sense. So we have an array out of bounds here, and actually I thought, oh yeah, so why don't we do this? So we try to run it originally, right, being null. I get a null pointer exception, right? To fix that, I instantiate a new array events, and then this goes out of bounds because I try to access the 20th, right? So I have two different exceptions: null pointer exception and array index out of bounds exception. To fix this, I can use a try catch block, and really this is just a really dumb example, and what I mean by that, by a really dumb example, is you may notice this and you may be like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna go out of bounds. I mean, maybe you want to cover yourself if you're sending it the index, right? I guess it depends really. So this is the stuff it was throwing. What if we went here and tried to do that, right? So let's make it throw a null pointer exception first. And so just to kind of show you, I have a try catch block, right? And like I said here, you try some code, and that's what I'm trying here. Then you catch an exception and exception variable name. So the first thing is I want to catch a null pointer exception, and that's what I'm going to call it. And I'm also trying to catch an array index out of bounds exception, and just so you know, it'll try to go to the first one it finds. Okay, first I should get a null pointer exception, right? So let's run it real quick and see. It went into this try block, and then when I got to this point, I got a null pointer exception, and it told me, right, you've had a null pointer exception. So we can just fix that real fast, and we should be good. Actually, this should be 20. No, we'll leave it at 19 and we'll comment that out for now. So I have fixed that, so I should no longer get a no pointer exception. And if I run this again, see I had an out of bounds because I have an array of size 10, and I'm trying to access the 19th place, which doesn't exist. It should only go up to the 9th. So then I uncomment this, and if I try to run, nothing happens, right? So there was no exceptions caught. But like I said before, like I said here, this finally block will run no matter what. So the try block will always run, and then if it catches any of these exceptions, it'll do something. If it throws an exception and it's not part of this, then it won't know how to handle it, so it'll let the JVM handle it, right? So, or Java Virtual Machine. Okay, but the try will run, and finally will always run. Just keep that in mind. Okay, so there's that stuff. Now, what is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions? So checked exceptions are exceptions that are at compile time. I'll show you an example pretty soon. But basically, you write some code and the compiler tells you, hey, this is not okay, you need to do something about this. And I should have an example in my code. Unchecked exceptions, they're the ones that the compiler doesn't tell you about. So maybe you're going to go out of bounds, but the compiler doesn't know or it doesn't care. And you decide whether or not to handle them. So these were unchecked because the compiler didn't check and didn't say, hey, you might go out of bounds or this might happen, right? It doesn't really care. And luckily, it doesn't check everything, because if it did, it'd be a pain and there would be so much work you'd have to do and so much stuff you have to handle. So what are different examples? Checked, found not found exception is one checked exception. So if you try to run if you try to use file, which I think my code is doing here. Yeah, file. Actually, I think I may have handled this. Yes, I did. Okay. File not found exception. Unchecked, no pointer exception, which I had, array index out of bounds, which I had, or illegal state exception, right? Those are good examples. And just to show you really fast, we're just going to comment this out for now. And we are going to run example 0 here. Okay. So, as you know, Java or the Eclipse IDE compiles the stuff as you're writing it, right? So it's trying to run this example 0, but I'm trying to use file. Unfortunately, though, file does not, like, it may throw this file not found exception. And I guess I forgot to talk about this. This is another way you could handle exceptions if they're in a function that's not main. Otherwise, if you're in main, I believe you can only handle it with try catch blocks. Otherwise, you can't run. Oh, no. You can say add throws declaration. Yeah, my bad. So there's the two ways, either try catch blocks or add throws declaration. So in our case, we are going to, but you must handle it, right? In our case, we are going to use, actually we can just delete this, the try and catch block, right? So I will try to run this, and if I catch the file not found exception, I'll just print the stack trace. So let's just try this out. Oh, it actually worked. Right, and it did this, but what if it didn't exist? So let's just say txtx, right? We'll save it, we try to run. Oh shoot. Yep, so there it is. It actually caught it, and then it printed the stack trace. Stack trace is just all this business here. So there's an example of unchecked exception. And then really that's the difference. And just another quick diagram to show you. Here I have the different type of checked and unchecked exceptions. And this is just an inheritance map, sort of. So these exceptions in red would be the checked exceptions, and I believe that extends IO exceptions. So this file extends IO. Yeah, there it is, IO. Yeah, it does extend IO. So it automatically becomes checked because it kind of branches off of this, right? And if it's any of these, they're checked, and the what do you call it? The compiler will tell you, and it'll ask you either add a throws declaration or do a try catch block. So you must do something about that. But if, on the other hand, it is an unchecked exception, you would not have to deal with it, right? It'd be a runtime exception, not compile time. It would be like if it was an unchecked, it would compile, but maybe you'll have a runtime error, and you may or may not want that, right? So yeah, so that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful, and have a good one.